Whoa, 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 whoa.
What comes after platinum hour?
Diamond. Both people have a diamond. And there are a couple people. Tanzanite. For some reason, Tanzanite is ringing a bell. All right, I'm here. Hey, everyone. We're here. We're here. I'm trying to time my caffeine a little bit better for the episodes. If you spike it beforehand, your brain can't really take that blast. So I try to slowly ease through it throughout the whole episode. And it is terrible, terrible off-brand Keurig cups. Whatever I've been drinking the last like 2 weeks, not good quality product, but we're doing it because the world's crazy. We take what we can get.
What do you usually say?
Usually I'm on that Newman's Own Dark Magic. But remember we had that whole fiasco like 2 weeks ago where I was like, dude, dark roast coffee actually isn't as potent. What the hell? And so now I've been on these Wellesley Farms joints, and I'm trying to think of which store brand is Wellesley Farms. Is that Walmart?
I've never heard of Wellesley's Farms before.
You're so affluent.
I'm never sorry. I thought it was a regional thing. Like, you know how like we don't have Market Basket, so I thought maybe it was something like that.
Oh, Wellesley Farms is BJ's. That's the
Yeah.
BJ's brand.
Exactly. See, we don't have BJ's. It's not because I'm affluent. It's not because I'm bougie. We just don't have them.
You gotta come to my side of town, drink little Wellesley Farms. Also, B, spoiler alert, and I hope my sister isn't tuned into this by any chance, but today I'm picking up PETA for my sister because it's her birthday tomorrow. And Davy Buckets is here. Oh, Davy. Oh,
Hey,
big dog.
what's up, buddy?
Hey, listen, I'm just going to hit the camera over here. And I also got two kick-ass journalists on the phone with me who help me do the research nowadays.
Nice.
Dude, is that Flo in the back?
It is, dude. Flow. My quarantine cut.
Damn, you really letting the quarantine get to you, man.
No haircuts here.
No, sir. Okay, we're good. Hey, Lexi and B, say what's up to Dave Wedge.
Hi, Dave.
Hi.
How's it going?
What's up, guys?
We've glowed up a little bit since our last episode, man. We're a little
I
more
like the
official.
golden beer. That's sweet.
Yeah, so actually, unfortunately, I actually, until about 30 seconds ago, thought this neon sign was a deer, but Brendan reminded me that that is most definitely a moose. And I
It's a
just looked,
moose.
yeah,
I can see it from here. It's a moose.
yeah, it looked pretty
Nice
sweet.
try, though.
Yeah, I'm trying, man. I mean, it's better than this whole like fugitive hideout you got back here. That looks like Whitey's cell. Where are you living, man?
I'm down in my basement bunker.
So what has quarantine been like for you?
Well, I mean, fortunately, I'm a writer, so I can get a lot of writing done. And I do some other stuff, as you know, too, some consulting and some political work, and that was slow for a while, but now with everything going on, I've been pretty busy with that. So I've been getting out more now, but the first couple of months I barely left the house except to get food, but I got a lot of writing done.
Did the quarantine totally mess up the press run that you had planned? Were you going to do like a bunch of in-person stuff?
Yeah, so we when we went, back in the fall when we were talking about launching this book, we obviously didn't know this was coming. And then once we realized in January, February that a lockdown was coming, we had a talk with our publisher about possibly delaying the release because it's such an uncertain thing. No one had ever released anything during something like this. So we just went back and forth, and ultimately, our publisher, William Morrow at HarperCollins, was like, you know what, we're going to keep it on schedule. We're just going to pivot a little bit and do it differently. So, it's disappointing because Casey and I like to have like a big launch event. The last one we had for the Tom Brady book in 2018, we had, 500-600 people, a bunch of media. It was amazing, and then, we did one for the Pete Frady's book back in 17 at Fenway, and like Big Poppy was there and Pete Frady's, obviously, the mayor came. And so we like to do those kind of big things. So it was a bummer that we couldn't have that. We like to celebrate these things with our friends and family and, the people involved, but, just different times, man. So everybody's doing what they got to do.
So how'd you celebrate this one?
So we did a big launch on like a Zoom launch on NBC 10 and
Boring.
Huh?
Boring.
Well, that's how we started the launch, and now I'm doing a lot of these things. But we're going to do something when things lift. We're going to do some sort of event, and we do have another book coming out in December, so hopefully things will be good then. We'll have a big event then.
Well, how did HarperCollins adjust their promotional strategy? Did they just pour like their marketing budget more into like social and e-commerce?
Yeah, exactly. And we've done a ton of press. We've been doing a lot of podcasts like yours, and a lot of traditional media. We did some national stuff. Actually did Jenny McCarthy's show, which was pretty cool, and with Donnie Wahlberg. That we did that. That's on Sirius. We did that last week. So a lot of that stuff has been fun, and it's totally different. But people, this quarantine has impacted every business, as including yours. It's changed the way everybody does things, and for us, it's bookstores are closed, and there still are a lot of people, believe it or not, that like to go to bookstores and shop for books and buy them. We sell a good amount of
It depends
books.
the demographic. I think older people like to hit the bookstore still, but kids my age would rather just hit up the Kindle or hit up Amazon.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But for us, especially a book about Whitey Bulger, there is an older demographic that's also interested in that book besides, just regular young true crime fans. And a lot of those people still go to your Barnes and Nobles and all that. And we do in-store signings, and those are always pretty fun. And, we meet a lot of people. So it's kind of a bummer we don't get to do that. And we do a lot of stuff at like libraries too, like public libraries, and people come and do Q&As and stuff. And those are kind of out for now too. Well, or they're on Zoom.
Hey, before we move on, can you just give a quick synopsis of who you are and what you do for anyone tuning in?
I'm Dave Wedge, and I am an author and a journalist. And I live in Boston, well, just outside of Boston. Live in Milton now, and grew up in Brockton. And I was a reporter at the Boston Herald for 14 years, and I left in 2013 and done a lot of different writing for a lot of different outlets since then. I wrote for Vice for a little while. I did some stuff in Newsweek and Esquire, and this is my fourth book now.
Can I tell you one thing I learned from our first episode, which stuck with me, was, and that doesn't happen a lot. Usually after the episode, I'm like, oh my God, I just blacked out. What just happened? But one thing I learned from you is like that as a journalist, like you gotta be a hustler if you want to be a good journalist. Cause you were telling me how like you used to go to that whatever terrible club in the Seaport was, you would show up there to like cover bands, and then the whole Boston bombing, like you didn't sleep for like 72 hours. So I always thought that was fire. I got respect for you, dude.
No, I appreciate that, man. I mean, I work hard, and I respect your hustle, and I see what you're doing, and I respect the hell out of it, and I was the same way when I was younger and your age. I used to, we didn't have podcasts and the internet, but I was out there hustling, on the streets and meeting people. And, I hate sounding like an old guy, but like, back then being a reporter, it was very different than now. Like, we had to get out and go meet people and dig through actual physical records at different government buildings and courthouses and police stations. And it was just a different game altogether. But I learned how to research that way. And that's what made me into who I am.
And also, it's something I've been learning too with the whole research squad, that journalists just desperately want to get out like a good story. That's something that's like never really enticed me, but I learned that from you too. Like, you just want to tell the truth for people who want access to the right information.
Yeah, that's what it's all about. I mean, that's why I did this, and why I became a journalist in the first place, was to inform people of the truth, whether it's about a murder or, Tom Brady's court case, or, Pete Frady's disease, or, I've done a lot of stuff around the social justice issues over the years. I'm a music fan at heart, so I've done a ton of music journalism over the years, and I grew up covering, rap and metal in the 80s and in the 90s and the 2000, early 2000s. So, name an act from that time, and I probably interviewed him or did something on him, and it was
I know, man.
super fun.
Every time we talk, you act like I should know every single act from like the 1990s. I'm like,
I
dude,
forget how young you are,
yet.
bro. I forget how young you are.
You haven't listened to Ed O.G.'s second and third album. What's your deal, dude?
Well, it's funny, like, you'll see as you get older, like even now at your age, like you think of things that you listened to when you were like 12, and kids that are now 12 don't know that. You know what I mean? So I'm 50 this year, I'm turning 50. So like a lot, I've listened to a lot of music, man, and a lot of good music. And, it's funny when you just remember the people your age have no idea what I'm talking about.
It's hilarious.
You're good at making me feel old, bro.
I think you got a young spirit.
Yeah, try,
Hey, so I also, I want to, for most of the episode, I want to talk about the book because the book was awesome. But I read your piece in the Globe too, which is great.
Which one?
The Brockton. The Brockton.
Oh, protest. Yeah, no. Yeah, that's so I'm doing a little work with the mayor. The Brockton's got a new mayor. He's a good friend of mine. His name's Bob Sullivan, and we went to Brockton High together. And he just took office in January, and he got hit with COVID. With that whole crisis, and Brockton's been hit really hard by the pandemic. They're like third. What's that?
Okay, there you go. You were lagging a little bit. Go ahead.
Okay, sorry. Yeah, no, the Brockton got hit pretty hard with the pandemic. They're like third in the state with cases, and they've had almost 300 deaths. So he got slammed with that, and then the George Floyd protests and the Black Lives Matter stuff started, and they had a big protest in Brockton last week. I'm sure you saw, and there was some violence, some window smashing and stuff. And Bob, I think, is setting the right tone. He's reaching out to the communities of color and the young people. He wants to include them in this conversation to fix what's wrong. Like, that's the thing right now, dude. Everyone's mad, and everyone should be mad. But now it's time to channel that anger into real change. And that has to happen in the city halls, the state house, Washington, and the voting booth. That's where the change is going to happen.
That's something I've been wondering a lot too, is like, obviously everything's so tense. How do you channel it into productive action? You know what I'm saying? That's look.
I met a young kid yesterday down in Brockton at the mayor's office. He sat with the mayor. His name is Ross DePina. And this kid blew me away. I don't know where he went to school or whatever, but he was a really smart kid. And he came in, and the mayor said, okay, let's hear your thoughts. What do you think needs to be done? And he pulled out his notebook, and he ticked off all these specific things that needed to be done. Like, we need to review the use of force policies. We need to review the disciplinary procedures in the police department. We need to review how minority hiring occurs, and so what has to happen now is Bob is literally going to work with that guy and some other people, some other smart policy folks, and they're going to go through all of Brockton's, rules and regulations, some of which probably haven't been looked at in 50 years. And it's time to look at those now and update them and make it so that everything is more equitable. Like, smashing a Dunkin' Donuts window is just an expression of anger, and I get it, but that already happened and it's over. So like, now let's take that next step and let's be that change, let's do it together. Because, white people can't understand what Black people have been through, especially in the inner city. we live a different experience than them. So we got to listen to our black friends and brothers and sisters and family, and we got to listen to them and take what they're saying and make it happen so that we can all be fair to each other. It's bullshit what's going on.
Yeah. So one question I specifically have for you on it is there's so much information and in turn misinformation right now. It's like media
Yeah.
is just like an onslaught from all angles. What do you think the best way to gather your information would be right now in the most honest way? It's like, where
So
would you go? Who would you talk to?
I mean, unfortunately, now I'm a journalism pro. I've been doing this for 30 years, so I know where the good information is and where the bullshit is. Unfortunately, there's a lot of people on the internet that are real good at making bullshit look like truth, and you just have to be a smart news consumer and you have to educate yourself. My advice is you start with the mainstream institutions. Not MSNBC, not Fox News, but places like the LA Times, the New York Times, although they've been a little sketchy lately. But I think, you get a lot of truth from your local newspaper. You'll at least find out what happened. The thing that's going on with the local newspapers is like they are so short staffed, they don't have enough time or resources to write a bunch of bullshit. They're just trying to get out the facts as quick as they can. And they make mistakes, but you'll usually get the facts. So you just got to read everything and check it. And, I would stay away from the real extreme, on both sides. Because, you're just not going to get the truth. Everything in life, the truth is somewhere in the middle. That's what I believe.
Well, the problem is those big institutions have the largest market share.
Yeah.
And so it's like, if you're looking for news, it's like MSNBC, CNN, Fox News are in your face the most. They got the most money.
Yeah, but they're not reliable, and they're not, here's the
But
other
I
thing.
see, I know that, but people don't. Not everybody knows that.
Right. But here's the other thing. Like within CNN and within Fox and within MSNBC, there is really good journalism being done. You just got to look for it. You can't just look at the screaming headline and go, "Oh my God, that's terrible. The world's falling apart." You got to dig and research these reporters, see who they are, and find out if they're credible or not. And I can promise you this: you read something that I wrote, it's the truth. And I can name you 50 other journalists that it's the same thing. You want to read some truth? There's a guy named Paul Pringle at the LA Times, one of the best reporters in the country. Dude is a beast, and he just uncovers corruption all the time. That's all he does. He's great. My friend Stephen Year at the Boston Globe. It's Annear. Great journalist, really smart. Chris Ferrone at the Dig Boston. Chris. He can get a little crazy sometimes with his views, but he has a good team of young, hungry reporters that dig for truth, and he does a good job at it.
Paul Pringle sounds like the alias for a Marvel character.
Yeah, it does. But man, you should read this guy's stuff. Did you see the story about the USC professor that was like selling drugs and all sorts of crazy stuff?
No, you love reading stuff like that. I hate reading stuff like that.
Well, I'm a journalist.
All these terrible stories. Like, how do you sleep at night?
Well, the story really is how the college protected him and how the newspaper tried to kill the story because they were in cahoots with the college. And that's the story. So what I'm all about, dude, is breaking down institutions and holding people accountable. That's what it's about.
I know. How long have you been F authority for? Like, how long has that been going on?
Since I was born.
You just never liked it? Did you get in trouble when you were young?
I mean, I've been threatened by everybody. You name it, I've been threatened. But I mean, look, I'm not anti-authority. I'm anti-corruption. So I respect authority. I love. My brother-in-law is a cop. Most of my best friends are cops in Brockton, and they're all great people. But I don't like institutional negligence and laziness, which is what a lot of it is at the government level. It's not so much corruption a lot of the times it's just laziness, and I like holding people accountable.
Well, I mean, that's a great segue for the book, and I mean, we could talk about what's going on right now all day, but I really love the book, so I just want to make sure we get into it.
I'm glad. No, I'm on a tangent, but I'd love to talk about the book, man. Of course.
Well, dude, the book was awesome. I just finished the epilogue this morning.
Cool. I'm glad
And
I got you to read.
well, it was an audiobook, so it was kind of like the cheapskate version.
Oh man.
But I honestly have been thinking recently that I might have threads of dyslexia, so I kind of have an excuse.
Well, hey, as long as you're taking in good information.
Well, so this is my question, my knee jerk question. As you developed the research for the book, and we'll start from top to finish, but as you developed the research for the book, did you like feel a weird attachment to Whitey because you learned everything about him?
I mean,
I heard
reading those.
sorry to interrupt you. I mean, I heard your voice the whole time because by the end you're like the audiobook guy was like, he was a serial killer and a pedophile. And now he's 6 feet under.
No, I mean, reading those letters. So, the book, we got access to over 70 letters that Whitey himself wrote to people. And reading those letters and holding them in our hands was a little weird, made you feel like a little connection to the guy. And, I was there in 2000 when they dug up those 6 bodies over at Tenian Beach and Florian Hall in Dorchester. I was standing out there in the right near the cops when they were sifting through the dirt, picking out bones. So I've been covering that case for 20 years on and off, and so I definitely feel a deep interest in it. But I didn't feel any sort of connection to Whitey. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, there were threads of that, but there was moments in the book where like there were flashes of his humanity. It was just like really interesting. There were
Yeah.
moments where you learn that they mercilessly killed Stephen Fleming's stepdaughter, and then at the same time he was like so nice to the kid in Grand Isle, Louisiana.
Yeah.
Like it was just really weird.
Yeah, it's not uncommon for serial killers to be like that, or mass killers, that they have some sort of vulnerable side. And with Whitey, it was pets, it was animals. He loved dogs and cats. And that great story down in Grand Isle, the family had to put down little, and Whitey couldn't stand the sight of it. He walked away crying. His guy that has no problem ripping out the teeth of some young girl, or strangling a girl, or shooting some innocent dude in the face and burying him, but he can't stomach the sight of a dog being euthanized. So he's definitely the other thing I think that's a big part of the story is that he was subjected to hundreds of LSD experiments when he was in jail in Alcatraz as part of a government program. And it seems like science fiction, but that really happened. It was a famous CIA program. They were trying to find a truth serum, and they were using LSD on prisoners to figure out what it would do. And Whitey took part in those to get time off for good behavior. And that doesn't excuse his behavior, but it was part of who he was. It really, that would mess up anybody.
Yeah, see, I'm gonna kick it to Brendan real quick because that was one of the points you want to talk about was the MK Ultra experience. But the MK Ultra, it was also exhibited on the guy who wrote, was it Catcher in the Rye or One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and also Charles Manson, correct? Same program.
You know what? You'd know better than me on that, to be honest with you. I'm not sure. Sounds right.
B, you want to just kind of chime in here?
Yeah, well, there is an interesting history of it with Ken Kesey, author of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and there's also a very recent book on Charles Manson. In the past, it had been conspiracy theory, but there's some evidence that Manson was actually using the same MK Ultra mind experiments to influence the Manson family and actually commit murders, which I find interesting because that's kind of a throughway to Whitey. And like you said, he was kind of bad. He was a really violent kid, but like there could have been some influence from MK Ultra. I was wondering how much you think the influence is.
I think that, if you were able to study Whitey Bulger's brain after he was murdered, I think you would have found some serious damage, like possibly even like CTE sort of stuff. He took a lot of beatings over the years from police officers, and just in fights, things like that. And he had these LSD experiments. People that we interviewed for the book, his family, his brother told us that that had a profound impact on him. But he had made the decision to be a criminal long before any government agency gave him LSD in prison. He was already in jail for bank robberies. He had already committed armed robberies, assaults. He was already a gangster. So I think it just made him worse. It's almost like, it made him like super gangster is what I think,
See, what's interesting too is before I had read this book, I had always had the common perception of Whitey as just like the elusive gangster who ran the Irish mob. And like you guys did a real deep job. Like, no, this dude and Flemmy were some psychos.
Yeah, they really were, and they were, I think one thing that we talk about in the book is, we don't go too much into all the old murders, but there was a series of murders, and I can't remember all the names right now, but they were trying to kill one guy. I think it was Paulie McGonigal was his name, and they killed his brother by accident. Then they killed like two other dudes that they thought was him. They happened to be criminals too, so everyone was like, "Oh, they got killed in the Mob Wars," but they killed three dudes before they got to the dude that they really wanted to kill. And so that's psycho. Like, they're psychos.
Yeah, I mean, I shouldn't even laugh. It's just sick. But how about that part where you said, I forget, I think it was the boxer they buried underneath the Neponset Bridge, and then he bought property and like would go out and look at the grave.
Yeah, so there was a boxer named Tommy King that his crime was he once beat Whitey up in a bar. So Whitey he didn't own it, but he made it his. There was a bar called Triple O's in Southie, right by the Broadway T station, which is now, I think it's Warden Hall is the name of the place. And Bulger used to hang out there, and Tommy King beat up Whitey one night outside Triple O's. So Bulger and his crew killed the guy. They bury him in the Tenian Beach over underneath the Red Line tracks over on the Quincy Dorchester line, and the marshes over there by the Neponset River. And they used to drive by on the highway, and Whitey would say, "Tip your hat to Tommy," whenever they would drive by.
So
the other one that they did was Paulie McGonigal was buried over there too. And whenever it was high tide and they would drive by, he'd say, "Drink up, Paulie."
You're smiling, which is throwing me off.
Huh?
This stuff kind of like it excites you a little bit.
He's a sick old bastard, man. I mean, it's gangster stuff. It's like, why do you like Goodfellas? Like, what do you like about Goodfellas?
Well, I like The Sopranos before Goodfellas.
Okay, what do you like about The Sopranos?
Well, see, actually, what really this morning, Whitey's killer. His last name was Fries.
What's that?
What was
Gius, Freddie Gius.
Gius.
Yeah.
His character really reminded me of Tony Soprano because the whole playing
Freddie?
with the daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, so to my point, what I love about Goodfellas, and I think why most people like it and why it's such a great movie, is because Joe Pesci is funny as hell, even when he's being a total psycho. Like he stabs Maury in the back of the head with the ice pick and says, "Oh man, I wish I didn't think he'd ever shut the fuck up." Like, that's funny shit. It's sick, but it's funny, and it's, so that kind of humor, that gallows humor kind of permeates these type of psychopaths. It's disturbing, but at the same time, I guess it makes us not think about the reality of killing as much. It makes us focus more on, all right, this guy's just nuts, rather than being sad about a murder.
Yeah, I hear you. So you started reporting in Boston in the early 90s?
Well, I started the paper in Taunton in 1993, I think, and then I went to the paper in Attleboro for a couple of years, and I went to the Herald in '99.
So we just had Red Shea on the podcast, and it was really interesting hearing the shout out for him in the book, which is really, really interesting. But when did the way you write about it, it was like Southie was a total circus. When did that stop?
I would say around the time that Whitey left, and it wasn't just because Whitey left. I just think that the city was evolving at that point, and Southie was turning into what it is now. It's starting to gentrify. And, a lot of those old Southie families from the 30s, 40s, and 50s were getting older, and they were all moving out. A lot of them moved out after the busing crisis in the 70s. They started moving out. but the ones that couldn't afford to move out started moving out in the 90s. And, it was kind of like a mass exodus of blue collar people out of Southie in the 90s and 2000s. And now you look at it now, it's almost unrecognizable. It's like, it looks like a glass city over there now.
Okay, so just peeling it back a little bit. So how do you collaborate on a book with Casey? How does that work?
Well, we've done 4 books together now, actually 5. And, so we're pretty good at it. We just kind of divide up the work, So for this one, Casey took on writing the first half of the book, and I wrote the second half. But we also add to each other's sections, and then we edit each other, and then we both give it a read through and that sort of thing. So, but we just kind of divide up the work and do our research. And sometimes I'll be interviewing someone, and something will be better for his section than mine, and I'll just pass it along to him, and we just put it all together like a puzzle.
And so when we were on the phone, you're like, hey, I didn't really want to write this book at first. Like, I didn't want to do it. Can you kind of speak to that?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I had covered the Whitey Bulger case off and on over the years, and I'm not like a Whitey expert. I guess I am now, but I wasn't before. I knew a lot about it, but there was a lot of other reporters that knew way more about the case and the whole corruption angle with the FBI than I did, because they covered it much more intensely. There's reporters in the city that's all they did for 20 years was only investigate the corruption in the Boston FBI office and Whitey Bulger. I didn't do that, but so because of that, I was like, all right, this story's been told. Everybody knows a lot about it, and blah blah blah. So I never thought about writing a Whitey Bulger book. I wasn't really that interested in it. But then when he got murdered, I was like, all right, now here's a way for us to get into the story with some new stuff, because no one knows the whole story about how he got murdered yet. So we can kind of write the final chapter in this twisted saga of this crazy crime boss.
Now, how did you get access to those interviews with Billy Bulger and then Freeze's daughter? Am I saying his name right? Freeze?
Freddie Gius.
Gius.
So with Billy Bulger, I was a political reporter, so he I covered him a little bit over the years in the early 2000s when he was president of UMass. Ended up and let me in. He knew who I was. He was like, "Hello, David." And I said, I told him why I was there. I said, I'm working on a book about, your brother's murder. I'd like to talk to you. And he said, come on in. Brought me in, we sat at the kitchen table, and I took him.
And you were like, let's go.
Yeah, I recorded. I sat in his kitchen for 2 hours with him and his wife. And, he just kind of spilled his guts. He wouldn't talk a lot about, he's guarded. He's he's a politician, so he was evasive about what he knew about his brother's life on the run and that sort of stuff. But he talked a lot to me about, why he thinks his brother was the way he was. And then with Freddie Gius, his daughter, Taylor, amazing young lady. She's really smart. She's talented. She actually writes. And she reached out to us when the news came out that we were writing the book. She reached out to us and asked if she could help us. So just built a relationship with her, and she was very crucial to helping us with everything in the book.
See, what's so interesting, it was a really great point in the book. I would be so exhausted if I was the Bulger family while all this is going on. Like, it just seems like something's hanging over your head for so long. But then they also celebrated his life when he passed away, which was just so interesting.
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, Billy Bulger told me, he said, look, I loved my brother. He said, I hated the things that he did, but I didn't know that side of him. He wasn't there when Whitey killed anybody. Whitey didn't talk to him about that stuff. He just knew that his brother was into some bad shit, and he tried to stay away from that side of his life, but he did love him. And, we interviewed his girlfriend, Catherine Gregg, the girl that he was on the run with for 16 years. I spent some time with her sister. She has a twin sister named Margaret McCusker, and she lives over in Southie as well. And, she said the same thing, my sister loved Jim. They call him Jim, Jim Bulger. So my sister loved him. I never saw that side of him. He was a good guy. He treated my sister well. So, they did care about the guy. And again, it's not unlike The Sopranos. That family loved Tony, but they didn't know what he really did. They didn't know who he was,
Is Catherine Gregg out, or she's due to be out this year?
she's out. She's living down in Hingham. She actually lives with one of Whitey's nephews in Hingham.
No, that would be a fire podcast.
Well, we tried like hell to get her, and she didn't want to talk. I think she's like the definition of ride or die. She will never tell her story. I don't think she'll ever tell her story.
Yeah, you guys did a great job with that in the book. It was just like totally blinded by love. I wish I knew what that was like, man.
Yeah. She was, she just was committed to him, and she just rode along with him for that whole 16 years. And at the end, she was really crucial to keeping him healthy. She would go get his medication, make sure he ate. He was an old man at that point. She took care of him.
But
it's a crazy story.
Oh, it's nuts. And he was pissed about the dog. Like that. Oh no, excuse me, not the dog, the cat that she was feeding.
Yeah, he was. Yeah, she would go and feed a cat, and he was always mad about that because he thought she was getting too friendly with the neighbors. And ultimately, she was. And that ended up. He was right about that, by the way, because that ended up playing into how he got caught.
So there are so many just ups and downs in the story, and so I totally implore anybody who's listening to this or tunes into this to go get it. But can you speak to just a couple of these moments? One, the Haunty. That shit was absolutely terrifying. Cannot believe that was real.
So I have there's a picture in the book of the Haunty. The Haunty was a house in South Boston that was owned by there's a gangster named Pat Nee that was an associate of Whitey Bulger. And Pat Nee's brother owned this house, and they nicknamed it the Haunty because they would kill people and bury them in the basement. And they'd drive by and say, "Oh, there's the Haunty," just same thing as they did with the highway. Like they thought it was funny that they had bodies buried in the basement, and they ended up burying 3 people there. And then the house got sold, and they had to dig up those bodies and move them. And they did that. They dug them up, they moved them, they brought them over to Florian Hall, where they were ultimately found after Kevin Weeks flipped. And I mean, just if you think again, the Goodfellas reference, the same thing happened in Goodfellas. They had to dig up Billy Bats and move him because they were building condos. And that's the scene where they're throwing up. That's how the movie opens, with them digging up the body. But these guys really did that.
You know what it reminds me of is that scene in Breaking Bad when Jesse and Mr. White. Have you seen Breaking Bad?
I haven't. No, that's one I haven't seen.
There's a scene where they kill these 2 dudes on accident, and they put their bodies in acid and bury them in the basement. Then it just like hangs over their head for like 3 years that they're this body in the basement. Good God.
Well, that's why they called it the Haunty, And it's that house actually got sold recently. It sold. I'm trying to remember. I think it sold for like $3 million, something crazy, because it's a big piece of land. Whoever bought it, they'll rip it down and build a bunch of condos.
And families will have prized moments not knowing that there's just gruesome murders right beneath their feet.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, there'll probably be people that will look it up and won't buy it because of that, but then there'll be sick bastards that will want to live there because of it.
Can I ask you a question? Do you think people like Whitey, and like you've done tons of research on it over the years and dealt with people like this, do you think they're born bad, or do you think they turn bad?
That's a good question. I mean, if I knew the answer to that, I could fix the world. But I mean, I think that I do think that there are people that are I think there's something traumatic in everybody's life that ends up being a murderer or a killer. There's something that pushes them that way. But I also do think that there are people that are born just with some sort of mental deficiency, or something's wrong with them. We call them off, whatever. But Whitey was, I think if Bulger didn't decide to go into crime, he would have been like a CEO and he would have made bank. He was a smart dude. He knew how to run business and influence people and manipulate. He was really good at it. And that's how people make a lot of money in this world, unfortunately. You can make money being a good person too, but there's a lot of money made by people that have those characteristics. So I just think he was just I think, we tell the story in the book about his father losing his arm in a railroad accident when he was young. And Bulger at that point had to start helping to provide for the family. So I think that didn't help his life course. And then, police beatings and then the acid stuff when he was in jail. So I think it all kind of, you know, then he met all these gangsters and started working for him and saw he could make money.
Yeah, but you're humanizing him again. Like, but some of the stuff in this book is like, it seems outer worldly, you know. It's like no normal human with like normal compassion could commit shit like this. And it wasn't just him, it was the Flemmy shit. He's the real nutso to me.
I think they both were. I think they were both really messed up people. And, you know, I love the part in the trial where Flemy's testifying and, you know, blaming Whitey for killing Debbie Hussey, and Whitey's blaming him. You know, it's like they both killed her. I think, you know, I think it's pretty clear that they both, you know, if you and me are together and I kill a dude and you don't do anything to stop it, you can be charged with murder, you know, or if you let it happen, or if you invited the dude over so that I could kill him, it's murder. That's what happened here. You know, they both knew that she was going to be murdered that day. It's kind of irrelevant who actually strangled her.
So another moment in the book, can you speak to? So is it actually like real life that when he was out in San Diego at the movie theater watching The Departed, that people actually saw him, or that just seems hyper real?
It's art imitating life. Yeah, that's true. I mean, we interviewed the actual cop who saw him, you know, and so Bulger on the day The Departed came out, I think it was like 2005 or something. He was living out in California at that point, and he went to a theater down in San Diego and went to see The Departed. And he's sitting there watching the movie, and 4 rows behind him is a San Diego sheriff's deputy who was taking a break from a trial he was in across the street at the courthouse. And that kid was from Massachusetts. He was from the Cape, and he recognized Bulger. He saw him. And he waited for him outside. The guy didn't have his gun though, because he checked it at the courthouse because he was in a trial. But he waited for Bulger outside because he wanted to make sure it was him. And as Bulger came out, they locked eyes, and he's like, it was him. And he thinks that Bulger made him as well. And then Bulger kind of hurried away, got on a trolley, and escaped. Gave him the slip. And the guy called for backup, and they pursued him, but they couldn't catch him. They couldn't find him.
Did Whitey ever admit to anything like that happening?
I think in one of the letters he makes reference to The Departed. He doesn't talk specifically about that San Diego situation, but he definitely in those letters makes reference to, you know, he talks about Black Mass and Brad, what's his name? Not Brad Pitt.
Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. Yep. And he, you know, he was very conscious of the entertainment angle of his life story. You know, he was into it. He talks about it a lot.
That would have been the most hyper real ending to the story of all time if they caught him in the movie theater watching.
That would have been crazy.
And imagine
I'm glad they didn't though, because actually from there, you know, the story just got a little wilder even after that, you know?
I know, but imagine if they had caught him while the scene of The Departed was playing where Jack Nicholson gets killed. Spoiler alert, everybody. My fault.
Would have been pretty great.
That would have been wild. So question, when I was doing a little research on this, there were these PBS interviews with John Conley and Kevin Weeks. You know the ones I'm talking about?
Yeah.
What is the timeline on those? Were those before they all got wrapped up? After? I don't.
I'll have to look. It was definitely before John Connolly got charged, because John Connolly didn't get charged so many years after all this happened. But Kevin Weeks served his time and then got out. I think he served 8 years. You know, he's a guy that, again, murder and bastard. You know, he killed people and was there for a lot of murders and buried bodies and unburied bodies. And he only got 8 years because he flipped. But John Connolly, for your listeners don't know, he was a FBI agent in the Boston office that Bulger, you know, basically put him on his payroll, and he was paying him off to get information and keep him free. And John Connolly ended up getting charged with racketeering, served 10 years for that, and then he got charged with a murder down in Florida. He basically set up a murder, told Whitey Bulger about some guy that was going to rat him out, and Bulger and Martirano went down there and killed him. So he's serving 40 years for murder. Yeah,
you really don't like that guy at all.
He's a horrible human, you know. I mean, he's sworn to uphold the law, and he's playing gangster. You know, he's an FBI agent. He picked a side. You can't have it both ways.
There was very biased digs in the book at him. Like you're like,
You think so?
That's slime ball Connolly.
He's a pretty bad guy, man. You know, I mean, I frankly, he's as bad as Whitey to me, if not worse in some ways.
So there are moments in the book, in the audiobook specifically, where you have these like supposed quotes that Whitey said. How did you choose those? Like that shit was so funny to me. I don't forget which scene it was, but it was like, and then Bulger said, "You shouldn't bring a knife to a gunfight, kid."
Oh yeah.
There's no way he said that. There's no way.
Yes, that's true.
How do you have evidence that he said that?
What's that?
How do you have evidence that he said
the
that?
interviews that we did for the book. I mean, we didn't just make those up. People told us that that's what he said, and they were there. So Casey got that. I'll have to check on that and get back to you. But I think it's actually cited in the book where that came from.
Well, there's a hilarious moment where he told the kid in Grand Isle, "You've got to drink your OJ. You've got to stay healthy."
Well, yeah. Well, we that family talked to us extensively. We did. They told us a lot of stuff. There's the whole puppy story I just told. That all came right from the family.
Well, it's also funny because that's something my dad would say. OJ is actually why is so unhealthy, and it's
all sugar.
It's literally a sugar blaster to your brain. It's terrible for you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. One interesting thread about Whitey in the book, which I thought was so weird, was how frequently his discipline was referred to. And Connolly talked about it in his interview too, like him being super disciplined. And it was really weird to me to think of someone who like ruthlessly kills people as disciplined.
Well, I mean, I think that, the best organized crime bosses are very disciplined. They have their rules and they stick to them. That's how they keep order in their organization. And, Bulger was disciplined in his own life.
He had fit, right?
What's that?
He was wicked fit, right?
Yeah, he did push-ups all the time. And, if you look at the old pictures in the hard copy of the book, he was pretty jacked. There's pictures of like wearing tight t-shirts, like looks like a mobster. The surveillance photos of him, but he was pretty jacked. And he just, he had his routines and he stuck to them, and that's not uncommon for like organized crime people.
What about you, Davey Buckets? You've been hitting the quarantine workouts?
Trying, man, a little bit, not too much.
Well, with that flow, man, you got to get yourself like a Harley Davidson and a leather jacket and ride down 93.
It's my hockey hair, dude.
I love the flow, man. Hey, Lexi. So listen, Lexi is a student at BU.
Yep.
Kick-ass producer for us. And I want to make sure I connect you with her afterwards because she's going to like run a non-biased media company one day. So I got to make sure I do that. But Lexi, you want to hit Dave with a question?
Hey, Dave. So I wanted to ask you a journalism question about something you mentioned earlier.
Sure.
So earlier you were talking about the New York Times and how you think they've been not doing great recently. I believe you're referencing the Tom Cotton editorial that was just published in New York Times. So I wanted to ask you what your thoughts are on the New York editorial board and how we're supposed to be objective journalists and how to maintain like a good platform.
Yeah. So that's what I'm talking about. That's exactly what I'm referencing is, the New York Times looks pretty bad with that Tom Cotton op-ed, A, for running it and giving that bastard a platform, but B, it was just, it was littered with errors, and it was, the New York Times has done a lot of weird stuff lately with, headlines, like they'll put I can't remember the specific cases, but they had some incidents where they like put a bogus headline on something and then changed it when they were called out on it. So, their credibility is not the best right now. But as I said before, within the New York Times, most of those reporters are some of the best reporters in the country. And I think you have to, I think you find individual reporters that you trust and you follow their work wherever they go. Like my friend Wesley Lowry worked for the Boston Globe, award-winning reporter, and he went to the Times, and he went to the Washington Post and won a Pulitzer for the stuff out in Ferguson. you know, the riots out there. So like I'll read Wesley wherever he is.
Lexi, that was a great question. And I think it was a great question because I didn't understand it. And it sounded super intelligent. I got no clue who Tom Cotton is, but I'm glad we got smart people on the team. Real quick segue. So in the trial, that dude Rakes was going to go stand trial.
Yeah.
Got killed in
Well,
Lincoln.
he was going to be a witness.
Yeah, absolutely. So funny story, a little ex shorty of mine, right? I grew up in Lincoln.
Oh.
And listen, and obviously nothing happens in Lincoln. And so I had a little ex shorty. She knows who she is. If you're listening, what's up? She signed up to intern at the Lincoln Police Department. In her first day as a tiny intern, this shit happened. They found the Rakes body.
Wow.
And so I don't really get the tie-in with Rakes. So was it connected? Did Whitey send someone, or was it, you said someone, he just had cyanide in his Dunkin's cup and it killed him?
Yeah. So Stephen Rakes was a victim of Whitey Bulger. Whitey extorted him and actually swindled him out of his liquor store in Southie. Whitey basically stole the guy's liquor store.
Is that Rotary Liquors right there?
Yeah, Rotary Liquors right there at the Rotary in Southie. So Rakes was going to be a witness in the trial, and you know, in the middle of the trial, he turns up dead in Lincoln, as you just described. You know, and obviously everyone went kind of nuts and thought Whitey Bulger was killing witnesses, but the police came out pretty quickly and said, you know, they arrested the guy that did it. It was some business associate, completely unrelated to Whitey. It was Rakes was involved in some business deal with this guy that went bad, so the guy poisoned his coffee and killed him. But it was just another one of those, like, again, weird, you know, stranger than fiction sort of moments. You know, in the middle of this trial, and this trial is all about a guy that's intimidating witnesses, extorting people, corrupting law enforcement, and a witness turns up dead. It was wild. It was wild when it happened.
Sorry, someone just FaceTimed me. That was unprofessional.
You need to take it.
I know. I was choosing between. I was like, Dave or this other guy. I don't know. What should I do? So one final question, or I got two final questions.
Sure.
There were, based on all the positive interactions that Whitey had over the course of the book, the people he was good to, was there a and this is Lexi, you helped me with this question, but was there a common thread between them? Were they low intelligence? Like, was he, because Red Shea in the podcast, they're like, yeah, like Whitey just knew how to use people really well. Yeah. Connolly says it too, like he's a user of people. I think Moderaco or whatever the FBI just,
yeah.
Were they all
like? Yeah, no, I think that's true. I think that he identified people in his life that he could corrupt, and he was a master manipulator. You know, Catherine Gregg's one of them. He knew that she was madly in love with him and would do whatever he said. So he took her on the run with him because he needed someone like that that would obey his every command and take care of him and give him cover. So, you know, John Connolly, I think, falls into that category, where John Connolly was, you know, just someone that Bulger targeted for corruption. You know, John Connolly looked up to Whitey and Billy Bulger. You know, he grew up in the same neighborhood and just looked up to them both. And when Whitey became, you know, the crime boss, Billy actually told John Connolly, "Hey, watch out for my brother." You know, and you know, so I think Whitey knew at that point that John Connolly was someone that he could corrupt. So he was great at finding those people.
What's the book you're dropping in December?
So we wrote a book with the author James Patterson.
Oh, and, Davey, that's a glow up. That's a big deal. Let's
yeah.
go.
Yeah, no, it's a pretty big deal. It was exciting. It was a good time. It's this year is the 40th anniversary of the murder of John Lennon, and we wrote a true crime book about John Lennon's murder. It's really about John Lennon's life and his murder. So,
wow.
And we wrote that with James Patterson. Yeah, that comes out in December. So the anniversary of John Lennon's death, the 40th anniversary, is December 8th. The book comes out on December 7th. So it's pretty
Davey, you're going up, man. Your career is booming. That's crazy.
Well, it was a fun one, man, and it's definitely, it's definitely a big book for us, and it's going to be a pretty big book, and we are working on some TV stuff on that too. We're trying to get that and the Whitey book. We're trying to get them both in the limited series.
Well, dude, can you do the Aaron Hernandez story and make the film about that?
Done with that, dude. No way.
Why?
It's just too dark, man. It's even too dark for me.
No, that's not possible. There's a reason I call you young Stephen King.
I was involved in that. I think I was involved in that coverage at the Herald, and I was working on a project actually where I was. So, did you see the project that came out on Reels where the kid went on camera? Aaron Hernandez's jailhouse boyfriend.
I didn't. I saw the documentary on Netflix.
Yeah, so there's another one that was on Reels, the Reels network, and Aaron's prison boyfriend comes out and tells it all. So I was involved in that project, but I got out of it because I just didn't like the way it was going. And it's a long story for another podcast, but that came out. So after that experience, I'm done with the Aaron Hernandez story. It's just too messed up, man.
It's gonna be a kick-ass movie, though.
I don't think. Yeah, you think they're gonna make a movie out of that?
Absolutely.
We'll see. I don't know, man. He was a really messed up dude, though.
That was wild. I bet if anyone's gonna do the Boston story, it's you. There's so many Boston ties in this book. It was crazy.
I interviewed Odin Lloyd's. I think it was his brother or his cousin, Odin Lloyd's cousin, and he was on that football team with him. And he was a real nice kid. He lived in Dorchester, kind of near me, and that's just a sad story, man. That kid did not deserve to be killed at all. Aaron Hernandez was a psychopath. That guy was a psycho. He was really messed up dude.
Yeah, they did a good job showing that in the Netflix documentary too.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like once every 5-6 months, we got to have just one podcast. It's just grim that talks about all the terrible things about humanity. So I'm glad you're the usher for that type of talk, man.
When I was at the Herald once, my nickname in the newsroom became the Grim Reaper because I had one week I covered 17 funerals in 1 week.
Why are you smiling? Like, why are you smiling?
It was and a lot of them were kids, man. It was kids that got killed in a fire, and it was just an awful week. And I don't know, man. This is just everyone has the thing they're good at. I'm good at covering crime. I'm good at telling stories. I don't consider myself just a crime reporter, but I do gravitate towards crime, covering it, and I try to pick stories that have some sort of redemptive quality. Like, for example, in this book, the redemptive quality here, I think, is that he got caught. And I'm trying to expose. Even Whitey Bulger deserves fairness from the justice system, and he didn't get that from the prison system. He got put in harm's way and murdered. And people in the prison system who made that decision to put him in that prison, they need to be held accountable.
As the narrator would say, that sick bastard would never see another day. Who was that guy? That guy killed it.
Yeah, no, it's funny because we get to listen to those. Like we'll get a bunch of clips of different guys and we help pick them. So we both picked that guy. I can't think of his name right now, but
a Boston guy.
He's like an actor, like a voiceover guy. I'm not even sure, but we had to help him with some of the pronunciations of the names and all that stuff. It's pretty crazy. It's a fun process. It
probably took a really long time for him.
Oh yeah, well, I mean, reading the whole book and getting all the names right, he probably had to do a lot of takes because some of those names, Monterano and Freddie Gius, those are weird names to say.
There was one that sounded like Flemmy, but it wasn't.
Paul Palagiro. Oh no, Frank Salemi.
Salemi.
Yeah. Salemi's life is a book too. That guy's got a wild story. Freddie Gius's life could be a movie.
Well, Weeks has a book, right?
Weeks wrote a book. Yep. And there was some shitty movie about his book. It was shitty though.
Come on, let's be positive.
I don't want to be positive about Kevin Weeks, dude. Are you kidding me?
All right. Well, hey, listen, I had a blast, man. I hope you had fun.
This is great. I got to listen to the Red Shea one.
I know you got to get Red Shay a book.
Yeah, I would. You should have. Did he say? Did he? He hasn't read it. Did you ask
Yeah.
him?
He hasn't read it. I said you were coming up. We're gonna run one. I'll definitely send him a book.
His book was pretty good. His Red's book was one of the better Whitey books that, you know, and there's a lot of people that think he, you know, made some stuff up or embellished and stuff. I don't know the truth of what really happened and didn't, but I read that book and I thought it was well done.
Well, he also did it.
The woman he wrote it with is a friend of mine, Phyllis Karras. She's actually she used to be a professor at BU.
Well, he did a young adult novel too called "Kid from Southie," which I, again, in my infant brain, enjoyed.
I didn't read that one. I'll have to check that out.
Well, I didn't read it either. Audio.
Well, hey, whatever, however you're consuming, man.
Well, hey,
Golden
listen.
Clear.
Yes, sir. Wait, we're not done. We got 2 bits to end the show. So listen, this is perfectly opportune for you. So we have a bit now called GDP sales mode.
Okay.
And I'm going to give you the floor for 40 seconds. I'm going to put my hand up when you got 10 left. You can say whatever you want in the 40 seconds. We're going to cut it up as a clip. It's called sales mode because usually you're selling something, but we know, like moral integrity, Dave, you might have something else to toss in there. I don't know, but I'm going to give you 40 seconds. I'm going to count down.
I don't know what to say. I don't even know what to say. I don't know what you're talking about here.
Okay. You want me to just dumb it down a little bit?
Yeah, man.
You get 40 seconds to pitch
my book.
You could pitch your book or anything.
Okay. Got it.
And I'm going to count down from 5. And then when there's 10 seconds left, I'm going to put my hand up.
Got it.
But you're going to be cut off at 40.
All right.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Sales mode.
Hey, I'm Dave Wedge. I'm an author here in Boston, and I have a new book out called Hunting Whitey. Pick it up on Amazon. You can hit me up on Facebook or Instagram, Twitter, all those things. Dave Wedge, not David, Dave. We got a bunch of other books that we've written. We wrote Boston Strong that was turned into the movie Patriots Day. And we wrote the book about Pete Frady's life story, and we're working on trying to get that turned into a movie. We have some news coming up on that soon. But with everything going on in the world right now, I want you all to find news that you can trust and do.
Your service got cut out at the end. I lost you at news you can trust. Just finish it off.
All right. You know, with everything going on right now in the world, I'd ask you all to, you know, find news out there that you can trust and do something to help your community.
There's Dave, the philanthropist.
That's it, man.
Hey, thank you so much for doing this. This is how we start and end the show. I hope you remember from when we ran it at the old studio. Hi, your name, and this is my platinum hour because it's your second.
Yep.
Hi, your name, and that was my platinum hour.
Yep. Ready?
I'm ready, baby.
Hi, I'm Dave Wedge, and that was my platinum hour. What else?
You blew it, Dave. You blew it. You blew it, man.
You
got to say 2 things. Hi, I'm Dave Wedge, and this is my platinum hour. Then directly after,
okay.
No break. Hi, I'm Dave Wedge, and that was.
Got it.
That was. And I'll give it a little preface. Listen, man, for everyone out there, I barely know how to read, but I read Dave's book. Just kidding. I did the audio book, but I'd bump it. All right, Dave, take us away, dude.
Hi, I'm Dave Wedge, and this is my platinum hour. Hi, I'm Dave Wedge, and that was my platinum hour.
Bang, well executed. And listen, via email, I'm going to connect you with Slugs and Lexi and B. If you can kick him any journalistic game, would love that.
Got it.
And also, I want to get your girlfriend's, your daughter's boyfriend hooked up with some GDP stuff.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
Shout out to him. And I'm going to get you hooked up with a shirt.
You're the man.
Just shoot me your address, sizes, favorite colors, and I got you.
Oh, that's nice, man. Thank you. His name's Austin. He follows you. He's a good dude.
Good.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Did you have fun?
It was great, dude. I love your show, man. You do a good job.
Let's go. I'll tell via text. We got a pretty wild guest coming up on Monday that I'll tell you about.
Who is? Tell me.
I can't tell you. All right. Actually, I guess I'll stop recording. We got Duvall Patrick coming up on Monday.
Wow.
So it comes at a pretty interesting time for the episode,
How
I
did you
think.
get that? That's great.
Dave, I'm a fucking hustler, baby.
Dude, that's a good get. That's a good get right there.
Well, it comes at a good time, and I think if we just keep the forum pretty open, people could really benefit from it.
Yeah, no, I mean, Duvall's great, you know, and I covered him for many years. I think he's a great leader. I wish he was running for president. I wish he was the candidate right now.
Well, he did run.
I wish he was the candidate. He got in too late, you know.
Well, I think he thought he was probably going to maybe get some steam in New Hampshire.
Yeah, it just wasn't the right time, you know, but he's a great leader. I know him a little bit. He's a good guy, good person. We have the same birthday, me and Duvall.
Same
July
age?
31st. No,
Oh,
he's older than me, man. Come on, dude.
How old?
Duvall's probably gonna be like 58.
Damn, you're turning
70.
50? What are you going to do for your 50th?
Nothing, dude. We're in quarantine.
Lexi just chimed in and says she's 63.
He's 63. Is he really? Huh,
Wow.
okay.
He doesn't look 63.
Yeah. I thought he was on. I didn't know he was 60. He's a good man. Great man. I like him.
All right, man. Well, hey, thank you so much. And we're going to release this on Monday. I'll send you some
Awesome.
clips.
All right, buddy. Take care, man. Good to see you. Thanks, guys.
All right, brother. Talk to you soon.
Later.